What's up? What up?
What's happening?
Another day.
Another day, indeed.
Great, wonderful thing. So, yeah, the title today is regarding Biden. What has he done for you lately? Ooh, yeah. I didn't know if you got the Janet Jackson.
I did. I just didn't sing it because no one can sing it like Janet. But ooh,
I know CL wants to sing it, right? CL? No.
Nah, I don't want to hear that.
All right.
All right. Well, I guess we'll find out together what he's done for us lately. But
Let's see, Kim, real quick. Do we got Chris on the line? You there, Chris?
You tell me.
What have you done for me lately?
Ooh, yeah.
There we go. Nope. There we go.
What's up, y'all? We here. What's good?
All right. Got Chris in the building.
All right. So we are all here. So do we want to see what's been going on in the news this week?
All right, in the news, let's see what's going on in the Olympics. Coming Olympics, Namibia. Teenagers barred from Olympic 400 over testosterone. Wow. Cape Town, South Africa. Two 18-year-old runners from Namibia were barred Friday from running in the 400 meters at the Olympics because of the high natural testosterone levels. Become the latest female athletes to be affected by the same contentious regulations that have sidelined Caster Semenya, Christine Mbuma, and Beatrice Masilingi, who burst into the Olympic medal reckoning with some blistering fast times this year, were subjected to, quote, medical assessments, unquote, by track governing body World Athletics at their training camp in Italy. The Namibia Olympic Committee said they were withdrawn from the 400 meters by the Namibian team after the test revealed high natural testosterone, which meant they wouldn't be allowed to run in the 400 in Tokyo. The pair can still run in the 200 meters, where they've also qualified, because track's testosterone rules only apply to distances between 400 meters and 1 mile. Yeah, that is odd. Anyway, in a separate statement, the Namibian Track Federation and the two teenagers would still go to the Olympics and will focus their full attention on the 200-meter event. It said the runners were disappointed, but they remain in high spirits. Their exclusion for the 400 sparked angry reactions and criticism of the rules from numerous political parties in Namibia. For this year, both athletes were relative unknowns.
Yeah, that is weird. The different rules for the different distances, being that 400 is still a sprint, but yeah, we'll see if there's any change in that regard in the future. Speaking of change, swim caps for black hair banned at Olympics because they don't fit natural head shape. The International Swimming Federation has sparked a storm of controversy after banning swim caps designed for black hair, reportedly declaring that they don't follow the natural form of the head. A spokesperson for FINA, Fédération Internationale de Natation, also said athletes haven't used nor do they need caps of such size and configuration. The pushback has been so resounding that FINA has now agreed to review the policy. The caps created by Black-owned British company Solcap are larger than those used at the Olympics in order to accommodate fuller and longer hair and braids. They're not expected to provide any competitive advantage because they're bigger and would likely create more drag or resistance for a swimmer. FINA's policy has been criticized not only as a harsh slap at elite competitive swimmers, but also as a symbol of the sport's callous barriers to young Black swimmers. Danielle Obi, the founding member of the Black Swimming Association in the UK, told The Guardian that the decision reinforced the systemic and institutional inequalities of the sport.
Wow. It exists everywhere. Sha'Carri Richardson, a track sensation, tests positive for marijuana. Richardson, a gold medal favorite in the women's 100 meters, was suspended for a month, putting in doubt an appearance at the Tokyo Olympics. Richardson, 21, won the women's 100-meter race at the U.S. track and field trials in Oregon last month, but her positive test automatically invalidated her result in that marquee event. United States Anti-Doping Agency announced the positive test result Friday morning and said Richardson had accepted a suspension of 1 month starting on June 28th. That could clear her in time to run in the 4x100 meter relay that takes place in the games, if she is named to the U.S. team. In an interview with NBC on Friday, Richardson blamed the positive test on her use of marijuana as a way to cope with the unexpected death of her biological mother while she was in Oregon for the Olympic trials. Richardson, who was raised by her grandmother, says she learned about the death from a reporter during an interview and called it triggering and definitely nerve-shocking.
Yeah, I saw a tweet that said, if you win while smoking marijuana, you deserve 2 gold medals.
Hey, I heard, they're giving out, some blunts for getting in that vaccine. So, hey, I don't know.
Yeah, it's appropriate for everything else. So, like I said, we'll have to see if there's any change in that regard in the future. Search efforts for 117 missing residents resume after Miami condo building is demolished. Search for rescue efforts of 117 unaccounted for residents continued Monday after the unstable remainder of the Miami area condo tower that collapsed was brought down. The section of the Champlain Tower South in Surfside, Florida, that remained upright after the partial collapse of the building June 24th was demolished at about 10:30 p.m. Sunday. The destruction has allowed search and rescue teams to explore more of the debris without concerns that the unstable building would collapse on crews. Miami-Dade County Mayor Daniela Levine Cava said on NBC News Today Show, "We owe it all to those waiting to get this pile and open it up for the search, and that's exactly what happened last night before midnight," Levine Cava said. "They were out again searching in the rubble, and we understand the families realize the fact that the time has gone by. They realize that the chances are growing dimmer and dimmer." 4 more bodies were found as teams continued their search, raising the death toll to 28 by Monday evening.
Howard University students want Felicia Rashad fired over Cosby tweet. Outraged Howard University students and alumni are calling for actress Felicia Rashad to be fired as dean of its College of Fine Arts in the wake of her enthusiastic support of Bill Cosby's release from prison. The hashtag #ByFelicia, a play on Bye Felicia. And if you guys are familiar with Bye Felicia, that's from the movie that Ice Cube played in Friday, but I'm sure most people are aware of that. Started trending this week after the actress celebrated her former Cosby Show co-star's release with a jubilant "finally." It looks like her tweet said, "Finally, a terribly wrong is being righted. A miscarriage of justice is corrected." Shout out to Howard University.
Okay, Rachel Nichols versus Maria Taylor, a bigger story at ESPN than its NBA Finals. Rachel Nichols, a white NBA sideline reporter who hosts The Jump for ESPN, reportedly said she wasn't hired as Disney's lead for the NBA Finals pregame show because the network needed a diversity hire. being Maria Taylor. The comments were part of a New York Times article that shows a leaked video of Nichols making the remarks. This comes one day after the Milwaukee Bucks clinched a spot in the NBA finals to face the Phoenix Suns. So, I guess welcome to the club, Rachel. And that's in the news.
Yep. In the club.
So you guys gearing up to watch the Olympics this year? Everybody excited?
I don't know, with all this anti-racism going on, anti-blackness rather going on, I'm not sure how I'm feeling about this.
What's up with the caps, man? Sister can't wear a cap, man. I mean, I'm trying to figure that one out. You know what I mean?
Apparently, our heads aren't natural. The way our hair is up under our caps doesn't make our hair look quote unquote
not the natural shape.
Yeah, that natural shape. But that is
at least
our
they're
natural
reviewing
shape,
it.
our hair. So,
right. Who's to define natural and for whom? But yeah, I mean, the article itself said, you would think that it would cause more delay and drag, is what I initially thought, but we shall see what they discover under their rules. So today's show, I guess we'll get into it. How many days are we now into office? I guess it's about 6 months now since President Biden first took office. Joe Biden signed executive orders today.
We're about, so he took over January 21st, right? So we're about 6 months in, right? And yeah, let's talk about what has he done for we lately.
Or ever, really, but we'll just talk about the time that he's been in office for tonight's purpose. All right, it looks like he's been signing a flurry of executive orders. Looks like with the last one being on.
Hey, Kim, sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt. I'm so sorry. I just want to just get this out right now. One, everybody like, subscribe, share, all that stuff, right? Like, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. ETM, right? We're all over Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all that good stuff. Do that. And also Friday, 9 a.m., starting 9 a.m., we're going to be live streaming the second meeting of the California Reparations Task Force right here live on ETM. So make sure you're here or make sure you catch the replay. Okay, sorry.
I see.
Yes, definitely catch us live on Friday or the replay. But if you come through live, we would love to hear your thoughts on the task force performance so far. So thank you for that, Chris.
Yeah, thanks for the reminder, man.
Okay. So a flurry of executive orders. Do we think he's done for the moment? Last one on 6/30/2021. Let's see. What are we looking at here? Diversity, equity, inclusive, and accessibility in the federal workforce. Okay, so that's supposed to be a all lives equality workforce initiative. Anyone have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I want to just point to that as something that let's talk about what executive orders do, right? So this is when the president, right, uses his power. He or she has a power to do something just with their words, with their desire, and they don't have to go through the Congress. So there's a certain amount of things that the president of the United States can do without needing Congress. And one of the ways they can do that in a number of different ways, right? The president of the United States, for example, controls many different large agencies. The president of the United States controls the military, basically, right? They're the commander in chief. too, right? They can make a lot of decisions without Congress there too. There are a lot of ways the president can make a lot of decisions without Congress. Executive orders is one way. Also, there's another thing called signing statements, which are a little bit different. There's another way too, right? So these right now we're talking about stuff the president can do without nobody else, saying anything from Congress, or at least have power over from Congress. Now, there are a lot of times fights between the president and Congress over these signing statements or these executive orders. So keep that in mind too. And the president has a lot of power. Okay, let's just keep that in mind. The president has a lot of power. So, the old President Trump, made like these made these executive orders like kind of famous, right? He was doing these executive orders live on TV, making them a big deal, having all the cameras there, all of that, and that I think brought attention to it. But all presidents use these, from Barack Obama, Bush, go back, right? I think it's been used more over the last, the more recent generations. But these are things that are very commonly used, right? And so right now we're going to talk about stuff that the president can do, and you're going to see stuff that the president can do by themselves.
All right. Should we go to the next one? Or you got something, Sia?
Yeah, can I jump in? Thanks, Chris, for explaining what an executive order is. This one specifically, 3459.3. Again, the title was Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Accessibility in a Federal Workforce. Essentially, what this does is it reestablishes, or quote unquote, to them, it reestablishes a way to address or create an initiative that promotes quote unquote diversity and inclusion in the federal workforce. And that includes recruitment, background investigations, promotions, retention, awards, like literally everything, onboarding, training sessions, benefits, salaries, like anything that's associated essentially with you being a part of the federal workforce. So this is supposed to address recruitment policies and make everything fair and equitable in hiring. And they specifically call out the term diversity. And what that means to them is including the many communities, identities, races, ethnicities, backgrounds, abilities, cultures, and beliefs of the American people, including underserved communities. So this is not specifically for Black people. This is just across the board, just FYI.
Cool. Thanks for that, CO.
Hey, can I put one more pin on that actually too? Thank you, CO. And let me go directly to this. So talk about this or think about this in the context in relation to what we're doing with our Upward Mobility Act of 2021 here at the state level, right? AB 105, right? Look at what we're doing with that, right? What does that bill do? That bill on its surface and inside of it too says, hey, you have to have a certain number of people who are not white basically on state boards and commissions that are voluntary after a certain period of time, after next year basically. So that's and then it says, how it defines those groups of people. It says, hey, these are, underserved communities, these are minorities, and here's how we define them, right? Then it goes through a list of groups, right? And so what was our work doing for that bill? Our language that we got added to that bill says, hey, by the way, when you have that, Black African American in those groups that you list, right? So yes, you should have us in there, right? But you have to break that down and you have to be specific. You have to break it down so that we know which part of the different Black community you're talking about specifically, because that's what you're supposed to know. And that's what we need to know to make good solutions, right? So I just want to make the connection here, right, for what we've been doing, and then also just sort of put this out there as a potential workaround because we all know that ultimately I think what is the solution we all want is something that says, hey, this is specifically for Black folks who descend from U.S. slavery in this country, right? Now, that is, first of all, here in California, it would be illegal to say something like that. And in many ways, at the federal level, it is not possible, it's not legal to say that too. So we have work to do. But as a workaround, think about what we've done. Let me stop there.
Yeah, just to elaborate on that, for the folks that are on the viewing session of this show right now, we did a show on AB 105, so definitely check that out. And if you're not familiar with AB 105, there is a link in the chat. When you have a chance, go ahead and check that out.
Okay, and I was just wondering, CEO, when you were reading through that language, if you saw anything on measurable metrics for when they reach this, equitable, how do they determine when equity has been reached, or is it too soon to tell, or too vague, too ambiguous at this point?
I encourage folks to definitely go read the executive order, but pulling from my memory, I believe it's like they put together a council, and the council is tasked with implementing this essentially for all federal hires. And they provide a report essentially to the president and say, hey, these are all of our recommendations. This is how you address, hiring, pay disparities, compensation, benefits, all that type of stuff. And then I believe from there, I'm not exactly sure how it's supposed to be implemented. I honestly would have to go back and reread it.
Okay, and an audience, if you're interested in reading the exact language, just pop the link in the chat where you can go check out all the executive orders, pull them up and read through them. All right, so that is that one. The next one we have is protecting American sensitive data from foreign adversaries.
Yeah, I think we can skip that one.
All right, well, why don't you take it from here, Yamoya?
All right, blocking property and suspending entry into the United States of certain persons, contributing to the destabilized situation in the Western Balkans, addressing the threat from securities investments that finance certain companies of the People's Republic of China, advancing equity, justice, and opportunity for Asian Americans, Native Hawaiians, and Pacific Islanders. Climate-related financial.
Okay, let's stop right there.
I know I was gonna say.
All right, let's stop.
Let's stop right there. Let's stop right there. Let's talking right there. Hold on.
No breaks.
Hold on. What's going on? With the Black Americans that in there, right? Oh man. Let's read this one. All right. Let's read this one. Let's read through some of this one because what we want to see is something like this with just Black Americans in there. Why can't we get that? Why can't we get that? I don't understand why we can't get that. That is unexplainable right now. How many executive orders we got on this list, man? 100?
It's like
300?
It's like 51, 52. I feel like 300 when you read it.
All right.
Word.
We can't get. Where is the one? Come on. So that's why we just said that. Hey, we got this. This advancing diversity in the federal workforce hiring. That's what we get. We get that, and then we gotta carve and put together these workarounds, right? And do a bunch of great, really creative, awesome political work, right? But we still have to do that. There should be one of these for us. And that's a problem. That's a big problem. This is on May 28th, 2021. This popped out, right? And you notice you didn't hear me say nothing about taking none of this away from the people who got this, right? This ain't you didn't even hear me sound like that, right? Because that's not what none of this is about. This is about where's ours at, right? Where's ours at, right? I want you to get yours, but where's ours at though, right? And plus put some more on ours too. I'm sorry.
Nah, don't be sorry, brother. That's exactly the lens in which I'm looking at all of the executive orders, specifically because when Harris and Biden were running, they leaned in hard into the black community because they needed our vote. And that phrase that we always hear everyone say, voting is an exchange, right? I give you my vote, you give me policy. And in looking at the executive orders that have come out thus far, I know it's still his first year. Um, I'm seeing a lackluster of information or programs that really support us. And that notion that, oh, they can't do something specifically for one group of people, the way Harris said, I ain't going to do nothing specifically for black folks while she was running. But literally on day one, and subsequently, the AAPI, the NHPI communities have received executive orders. And as Chris adequately mentioned earlier, you don't need Congress, right? You don't need the Senate. You don't need the House of Representatives. You don't need anybody else's vote. All you need is a stroke of Biden's pen to do massive changes. So I definitely want to dig in and chat a little bit more about what's actually included in this, because we should be paying attention and asking, as Chris said, for this plus some, right? This particular executive order creates an unpaid commission that lasts for 2 years, and it also creates a quote unquote initiative. And Chris, you might have to help me out with that. But I know that the initiative is to advance equality, quote unquote, equality, justice, and opportunity for AA and NHPI communities by coordinating federal programs, yada, 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 specifically for eliminating barriers to equality, justice, and opportunity faced by the AA and NHPI communities, including in advancing policies, programs, and initiatives. How much do we need that? Right? Like, I'm about to get on my soapbox. I'm gonna step back.
A long time ago, but I wanted to ask, I know with executive orders, they can be overturned, from one administration to the next. So with our reparations in terms of HR 40, does it make it more solid when it goes through the channels that it's taking through Congress, rather than an executive order that could possibly be overturned by the next administration?
Correct. Just as Biden has come in and overturned, and we'll get to those on the list, several executive orders put forth by Trump, the next president can come in and do that, because it's the power of the president to grant and to remove within and such. So you're right. If something goes through the Senate and the House of Representatives and gets signed then by the president, then it's a lot harder to undo, which doesn't mean it can't be, but it's harder to be undone.
Okay, if we can, get it done. I thought there was supposed to be more movement with the HR 40 around Juneteenth, but Juneteenth has come and gone, and I have not seen any additional movement. So I guess we'll stay tuned for that. All right, so that was advancing equity, justice, and opportunity for Asian Americans, Native Hawaiians, and Pacific Islanders. We move on to climate-related financial risk, revocation of certain presidential actions and technical amendment, improving the nation's cybersecurity. I don't think anyone can argue with that. Establishment of the Climate Change Support Office, increasing the minimum wage for federal contractors. Any thoughts on that one, Chris?
Yeah. Real quick. Yeah, thank you. Thanks for coming right to me. Thank you. So I want to make 2 points here. And I'm going to make the 2 context points here, because we're going to be going through like the technical words of the titles of the executive orders and into some of them. Right. We're not going to go into all of them, but some of them. Right. First of all, keep in mind the point that we made earlier. Right. It is possible to do executive orders that specifically target one specific group of people. Okay? It is possible to do that. Right. And so far, we don't have that here. Right. 2, CO made a really good point earlier about the voting as an exchange thing. Let's think back to 2020. Right. what was they telling us? They was yelling at us, right? Oh, you don't want to give your vote to Biden just because he's there and he's not Trump. You must be voting for Trump. And what we were saying was, listen, we want to hear from this man. What is he going to do specifically for black folks? And what we heard was he can't do nothing specifically for nobody, right? But we just see that. But what you're looking at on the screen, examples of that not happening, right? So the question is right now, right? And then we also heard was let's hold him accountable. We gotta give him our vote, then hold him accountable. And we said no. Holding them accountable is not giving them the vote before we get commitments. That's how you hold them accountable. You don't hold them accountable after you gave them what they want, right? That don't make no sense. And you didn't get nothing, right? So right now, we heard that too. So now the question is, because we going through the executive orders right now, we ain't going through the anti-black Biden policies that's out there also, like that new crime bill that's coming, right? That was presented last week, right, by the White House. That comes out of the White House. All right, that's the White House telling Congress, I got a proposal for a bill for you. All right. So the question right now is, where are the people who was telling us that we were not supposed to get commitments from this person? Those people have to be held accountable, actually, right now, because accountability goes both ways, right?
They're in hiding, very, very quiet on my social networks.
Well, I mean,
they're gone. They're gone.
Well, my question then, Chris, is how do we then put pressure on those individuals? Like, for example, and I don't know if, for example, like the CLBC or any other organizations that represent, the black community. I don't know where they stood on that, so I'm not going to put them particularly in the box. But like, what can like average people do to say, hey, you voted or you told us to go vote for, Joe Biden because we didn't want, Trump in office. Like, what does the average citizen do to if they want to take action on that?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. So, I mean, just at the basic level, right? For those people who are like, sort of care about this and have the access to social media, right? Just like a basic thing, right? You can lift up your voice on social media like now, right? You can talk about this on social media like right now, right? Like you can do that right now. So like that. So like for folks who have that kind of access, and I know all of our people don't have that kind of access, right? But for those who do, right now, you can start talking about this on social media. You can also start talking about this to your friends and family, right? Because get this, in a few months after Labor Day, actually, you're going to start seeing a lot more political ads, okay? Right? And political talk, right? And you're going to see a lot more of that stuff because people are going to start formally and publicly announcing that, hey, I'm running for 2022, and I'm campaigning for 2022, right? The campaigning starts pretty much a year before, all right? So keep that in mind, right? That they're going to be back for you, okay? They're coming back for you, okay? Soon, okay? So the work happens now. So, right? So just on an interpersonal level, right? Like start raising your voice about it. Start talking about it on social media. Also start talking to people in your family, your friends, etc. Right, and also make a personal commitment. I'm just giving you some personal stuff you can do here. Right, not sort of the organizing stuff yet, but the personal stuff. Right, just make a commitment to like staying connected to places like ETM. Right, places where you can get like this kind of look at what's going on in the political stuff, but not from a like super technical political way. You can understand what we're talking about, right? For the most part, right? Even though we're reading through some pretty, technical stuff. So make a personal commitment to stay informed on a regular basis. It doesn't have to be every day, but make that personal commitment because we're going to need strong people, right, to actually do what has to come next. So that's where you can start. There's a lot you can do from the organizing stuff, and I can't go into all that, but there's a lot you can do from the that can be done from the organizing perspective. And I think a lot of what we're doing right now is actually helping, right? Like we've been working to build up a platform, right? We've been working to build up a platform, right? And that adding more platforms and more voices, right? That it won't necessarily bring down the power of the other voices, but it will give alternative voices, and that will even out the power. So that will help also.
All right, Kim, you want me to keep going, or you?
Yeah, well, if Chris is going to say anything, let's see, increasing the minimum wage for federal contractors. How is that different from, federal wage from normal workers versus contractors? What are we looking at, if you know?
So that probably relates to I'm going to give my unofficial, unprofessional opinion here, but that probably relates to people who are employees of people who have federal contracts. So there's a minimum wage. There's a certain way that you, like, if I get a federal contract for something, like my Black-owned business gets a federal contract for something, right? And then I hire CO and you Moya and Kim and ETM, to do some production work, right? I can't pay you less than the federal minimum wage, right? So that's the federal minimum wage. That's the minimum wage for federal contractors. That's what my unprofessional answer is.
Yeah, that's correct. Because previous to this, what would happen is, like, if we have a business in California and our minimum wage is $13, or we have a business that's in, let's say, Florida, and the minimum wage is, $3.99, we could choose based on the state, based on where our business was, where we're operating out of. Now it sets a federal level minimum wage.
Okay, all right. I can agree with that. I can definitely agree with that.
One other thing to say too on this. Sorry, I didn't hear your question.
No, go ahead. I was just saying I agree with this.
Cool. So one thing I want to say is too. So let's put this in context for the folks watching and listening, who are going to listen later, for those who are live right now. Let's put this in context and pull this out into the other talk around the not federal minimum wage, but the just general minimum wage, right? That was something that the president campaigned on, right? Or that was a part of his campaigning, I think, right? I know that was a part of the Bernie people, right? Which was, hey, we need to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour, right? So there is stuff that the president can do, right? And this is one of them, right? Now, to be honest with you, I'm not sure what the percentages of Black folks who are getting federal contracts, and also the percentage of Black folks who are hired by people who get federal contracts. I'm assuming it's a small percentage and probably less than what it's supposed to be. I'm almost sure of that. Right? But this is another thing that the president can do, and there are people who are going to be happy with him for doing this. Who want the federal minimum wage to be upped, but obviously they want Congress to really do the big federal minimum wage. And that is something that, to be honest with you, let's talk about real quick, how that might help or could help Black folks. Now, the argument that we get is that if you raise the minimum wage, that's going to help Black folks because Black folks tend to make less, right? So that's going to help us more, right? Okay. So, one, that argument is based on some assumptions, right? And also, that argument is actually not true. Okay? It's actually not true that it helps us more. First of all, wealth is more important than income, right? We all agree on that. Wealth is more important than income. And right now, a white household with a head of the household has no job at all. It's unemployed. Is wealthier than a household where the person head in the household is Black and has a job. So income is going to help. Obviously, who don't want more money, right? But if we're not doing nothing to change the wealth situation, then we're not doing nothing to bring Black folks up. Because what we need to do is take Black folks from the bottom up. It's not enough just to give us more money, but we still at the bottom anymore, right? That's not enough. And we also know it doesn't work because people who make more money are going to benefit more, actually, in reality.
Yep. All right. Is there any more on that one, or shall we move to the next orders, executive orders?
Proceed.
We shall proceed. Oh, and by the way, the hourly minimum wage for federal contractors increases to $15 starting January 30th, 2022, according to the link that's currently in the chat. So looks like Joe Biden signed a worker organizing and empowerment executive order, blocking property with respect to specified harmful foreign activities of the government of the Russian Federation, establishment of the Presidential Commission on the Supreme Court of the United States. Yeah, maybe we'll talk about that actually, about the Supreme Court in another show. But yeah, if anybody has anything else, I'm going to move on to the next one. Termination of emergency with respect to the International Criminal Court, establishment of the White House Gender Policy Council.
Hey, can we stop right there?
Yeah.
CEO, you want to go ahead? Or yeah.
Take the floor first. Go for it.
All right. So here we go again, right? What were we just saying? We want to see establishment of the White House Black American Descent of U.S. Slavery Policy Council. I want to see that, right? I want to see that. I want to see it right next to the gender policy one. Have the gender policy one. I want to see the one that focuses specifically on us. And this is another example. And we can go into a little bit of what this does, and maybe CEO might. But I just want to start there. CEO, you can go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to tap into a little bit of what's inside the executive order. This one specifically creates, again, another council. And what they do is they have 100 days from the order date to review all existing regulations, orders, guidances, documents, policies, and any other similar agency actions, essentially to make everything fair and equitable for women. According to sex. So it's like non-discrimination on the basis of sex education programs or activities receiving federal financial assistance. And again, just a quick note, all of the executive orders are all tied to federal money, right? So it's not necessarily going in and say, okay, the private companies has to do this, but if a private company wants a federal contract, then they are subjected to these rules and these regulations. So this one is specifically for sex. And I'll leave it at that. They do reference Title IX in there a bit, a couple times, but I encourage folks to go read it themselves.
Very well. Okay, so let's see. That was Gender Policy Council. Establishment of the White House Gender Policy Council. All right. Guaranteeing an educational environment free from discrimination on the basis of sex, including sexual orientation or gender identity. All right. So is that something that the establishment of the White House Gender Policy Council will be looking into?
Sorry,
can you hear me?
One more time. Oh, we can hear you now, Chris.
Okay, I can hear you. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
We can hear you.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Chris?
Just making sure.
Okay.
Yes, can hear you. So the next one that I read, 13803, guaranteeing an educational environment free from discrimination on the basis of sex, including sexual orientation or gender identity. That sounds like it related in some way to the establishment of the White House Gender Policy Council. Would you think they'll be working on initiatives for this executive order?
Oh, I actually futzed up and I read you the information for that one.
Oh, that's how closely related they
Yeah,
are.
they're literally right next to each other. I can we'll edit this out. But if we want to go back to the 1420, that one is also a council. They have more time than 100 days, I believe. But they're specifically developing the strategy that includes recommendations on policies, programs, initiatives, yada yada yada, or implemented to advance gender equality and equality in the United States and around the world. I found the around the world part quite interesting because we don't have it figured out here. So who are we to go off and tell somebody else what they need to be doing? But that council specifically, um, it does several things. And again, I'm gonna continue saying this. I encourage everybody to go read it themselves. But there's stuff in there like promoting gender equality and leadership, empowering girls, increase access to comprehensive health care, address health disparities, and promote sexual and reproductive health and rights. Which I do think that part is interesting because that's gonna go against most of the lower states and their anti like abortion type stuff. So
And
I'm
if I
curious.
remember correctly, reading this one, there was some dollars attached to this for the outreach or study or something like that. So yeah, they're definitely getting back to back, tangibles on that one.
Yeah.
Hey, can I say one thing too, real quick? So I just want to make an overall point again because I do want to just sort of bounce in and out, right, from the low to the high level. So I'm gonna take a high level just real quick. So how did these executive orders get here, right? Like why did Joe Biden pick this one versus that one? So let's look at the two that we looked at right there, right? Those two, they're very much related, obviously, right? How did they get there? They're the result of what, right? So there are, I can tell you right now, there were people who spent a lot of time and probably a lot of money too, and a lot of effort to convince Joe Biden and his people to do an executive order that does all of that. And that all of the language, because the executive order is pretty long, or these are pretty long, right? They have a lot in them, right? All the things that are in them, they weren't just thought of in one day, right? They were thought of over time, and there was work that went into putting all this stuff together, and there was a path that people who wanted this to happen took, and they started with nothing, or they started with not having an executive order. That's nothing for now, and then they now have an executive order or two. So let's draw a circle around that part, because that is, I think, what people like us and a lot of people out here like want to know, right? And are figuring out too. So that's all I want to say.
All right. So next on the list is 13623, promoting access to voting. Promoting access to voting. Okay. So it sounds like some outreach, letting people know where they can vote. Pretty standard stuff. Next one, America's supply chain. Oh, were you saying something, Chris?
Yeah, I want to stop. Spoiler alert, we're not going to get through all these tonight, right? Okay. So, because we're coming up on the hour, right? So, but let's talk about some important stuff. So, one, yeah, we can maybe, I don't know, CEO, if you have it, can you look and see inside of this one too. Maybe give us a little bit of a sort of a summary like you've been doing. And while you're doing that, the thing to say is the Democrats or the Congress just rejected the voting rights bill, right? Like last week or 2 weeks ago. I think it was last week or 2 weeks ago. And the Democrats also themselves were blocking their own bill at a certain point also too, actually. They also didn't have all of their votes for their own voting rights bill. And that's because of a few very small one or two Democratic senators who didn't want that type of voting rights bill. So the Democrats had so even the people who you see this, right? This is like something to take a look at. Even the people who said vote for them, blocked their own voting rights bill 2 weeks ago. Now they were able to hide behind the Republican Party a couple of weeks ago because the Republican Party blocked even the vote, even going to a vote, because in the Senate you have to vote. Okay, and so they blocked the Republicans don't even want to bring it up for a vote. So they blocked it 2 weeks ago, and so the Democrats were able to hide behind that. But the Democrats the week before didn't have the votes for it. So President Biden has said himself that he is not doing nothing for voting rights, specifically that like in the way that the Congress wants it, from his own executive order, from his own pen, right? So let me pause there and stop there, and maybe CEO, you could give us a little bit of the source.
Sure. Honestly, this isn't one of the executive orders that I dove into. I did just pull it up because this is all accessible and available online. For what I was skimming while you were chatting, it has to do, quote, like Section 3 talks about expanding access to voter registration and election information. They sort of talk about making a seamless transition between federal websites and state websites. They talk about ways to provide relevant information in the course of activities and services that directly engage with the public, including agency materials, websites. So to me, this is, like I said, I haven't dug deep into it, but a lot of it at first glance is looking like a bunch of fluff.
Thank you for that. No, I appreciate that, and no, that's enough, because like that's a lot right there. And without going too much further into this, let's keep our eye on what's going on around voting, because there were conversations going on that I got pretty nervous about actually a couple of weeks back, just sort of watching some of the political stuff behind the scenes going on with the people who were trying to offer alternatives to the voting rights bill that ultimately didn't even get through anyway. And some of the alternatives sounded like they were sounding like, I got the Trojan horse feeling, like people who really want to do something about the 1965 Civil Rights Act, the 1964 Voting Rights Act, who didn't like that in the first place, kind of people, right? Were offering quote unquote alternatives. Okay. Now it may have been a good thing that all of that stuff everything got shut down, and I think the project is pretty much stalled now. But let's keep our eye on what's going on, because we're also coming up to an election. We also had a crazy ass election last time, right? Okay, with the voting, right? And Republicans right now, I think across the country, have been putting up voting rights or voting changes bills all across the country, and have been up against challenges in court too, because of what happened last time, right? And I don't think we've really dealt with all of that fallout, yet. And we've seen, because we haven't had an election since then, really. And by the way, speaking of elections, just real quick, for those here in California, as we wrap this up, for those here in California, a recall election of Gavin Newsom, our governor, speaking of elections, has been scheduled for the 14th of September. And I was totally wrong, you Moya. I was telling you when we met the other week that I thought, oh, it's definitely going to be next year because they have all these elections next year. No, it's actually in 10 weeks. Okay, so.
Okay. So it sounds like they're making it harder to vote, but they're making it easier to find information about how hard they're making it is for people to vote.
Yeah, I did a little bit more skimming. They also chat about like, hey, if someone needs help filling out their vote by mail ballot, there'll be services for that. There's also something in here about like allowing third party soliciting and facilitating approved nonpartisan third party organizations and state officials to provide voter registration services on agency premises. So this is something that I will actually after this go back and dig into a little more. Simply based off the stuff that Chris is saying about how we already know that the vote itself, the ability to vote has been under attack, and there's been several.
Yeah, and some of these initiatives, it just sounds like they are, pairing you with an overseer to help you make your voting selections. But like Chris says, we just gotta keep an eye on this. Okay, so next, America's supply chains, revocation of certain presidential actions, revocation of.
Just one thing about this real quick. On the revocation stuff, just real quick. That's something you were asking earlier, right? About the like, hey, can something be undone by a president through executive order that another president did by executive order? And I think we just had like 2 or 3 executive orders that undid something from some presidential action before, right? And so I just wanted to point out that CEO was absolutely right.
Okay. All right. So revocation of certain presidential actions, revocation of Executive Order 13801, establishment of the White House Office of Faith-Based and Neighborhood Partnerships, blocking property with respect to the situation in Burma, rebuilding and enhancing programs to resettle refugees, and planning for the impact of climate change on migration. And that's the end of that slide there. I know we're up on our hour. If anyone has anything to say on those last few executive orders, do we want to revisit the remaining ones, or we want to forge ahead? Just let me know.
Yeah, no, I think we're good to stop here, right? I think we've had enough executive order, for dinner. I mean, from our let's come back.
You fool, Chris.
I'm full, I'm full. But I think we should do this. We should come back to this we should just do this maybe on a regular enough basis and just sort of check in on this, right? Because it's obviously going to matter. And I know we're going to do the GOAT show. And by the way, check out the GOAT show that's coming up. The political GOAT show is coming up. I think we said we're going to start this Sunday, right? If I'm not mistaken. So yeah. So check us out this Sunday. Yeah, absolutely. Yes, check us out. So we are going to talk, about some of this, but keep all that in mind. A lot of this is stuff that we want to do on a regular basis, right? And so I think we should call it a night.
Yeah, I co-sign that. I definitely would love to come back and finish the rest of the executive orders because there are a couple more in there that I'd love to chat about with enough time. But also to Chris's point, as they come out, I'll be down to have a quick section of, hey, there's an executive order that just came out, and be able to dig into it a little bit more deeper than we are now, but not have to have a whole dissertation on it.
Right. It might just be an in the news topic. Latest executive order released today. But yes, we'll definitely be back bringing you more political content. So yeah, well, I guess that's it then. Everyone have a good one.
All right, family. I don't think we have any
Good night.
calls in the line outside of Chris. Consistent family. Y'all need to call in.
Yeah, I
That's
won't
what we
call
have
it today. Yeah,
call us. I want to hear from the community. I want to hear from you too. So ETM out.